Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider TV, brought to you, as mentioned, by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports, alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. Pre-game music selection tonight, Blinded by the Light by Manfred Mann. Did you like that?
I did.
And good song. We were really pumped up tonight. Why not? Because Alabama basketball is dancing for the second consecutive season. The number 6 seed in the West region. Earlier today, Alabama held its final practice before leaving for San Diego for the NCAA tournament. The Crimson Tide will play on Friday afternoon against the winner of tomorrow night's round of 68 game between Notre Dame and Rutgers. Alabama will be, of course, tuning into that game and watching it from the hotel out there in Southern California, and then they'll break down the video with the team. They've already been preparing for both teams, but they'll know tomorrow night exactly who they're going to play. Now, the last time Alabama traveled to San Diego for the NCAA tournament was 2006. Alabama was a 10 seed and beat Marquette in the first game before losing to UCLA in a really tight game in the round of 32. Alabama lost 3 straight to finish this season: Texas A&M, LSU, and Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament. This is head coach Nate Oates' 5th appearance in the NCAA tournament. He got Buffalo to the dance 3 times, including his final 2 seasons with the Bulls, and now, of course, he's 2 for 2 at Alabama. Remember, 2 years ago, right? He didn't have the NCAA tournament because of COVID, but he went last year as a 2 seed to the Sweet 16, and now he's back as a 6 seed. And the bottom line for head coach Nate Oates at this point with this basketball team, Ronnie, he's talked about all year, we need to do this better, we need to do that better. Well, a sense of urgency now, because the bottom line is, it truly is, when are you come back home for good?
Shoot, this March Madness doesn't get any bigger than this. I don't feel like there's any outside motivation. I feel like we're all motivated to just go out there and play hard and win.
I think we played hard enough to win these last 2 games. You can play hard and still not be locked in on the defensive end, flying around, making dumb mistakes and fouling, still gets you a loss.
All right, let me bring you in here. 6 seed, which I think speaks to Alabama's schedule, and not just the fact that they play the toughest schedule in the country, but they win a lot of those games against Gonzaga, against Baylor, against Houston, against Tennessee, against Arkansas, because they got 13 losses. That's the second most losses in the field. Only Michigan has more, and yet you're a 6 seed, so that's respect. But now you've got to go out and get it done on the court. Either Rutgers or Notre Dame, they're both good teams, different styles. Rutgers is an in-your-face defensive team, a little bit like Texas A&M. Notre Dame spreads it out kind of like Alabama shoots the 3. So, regardless, though, it's going to be a good team. We've seen this Alabama team be up, and we've seen them be down. What are you expecting on Friday afternoon?
It's a new start. I mean, you've got to be motivated. I think it's certainly something that is a refreshing. You get the season behind you. You didn't finish well, Gary. I just think the players have to look at it as just a fresh new start. Get the past behind and look forward into this tournament, what you can do, what you can achieve. I think they got a great draw, probably a little higher than what some people expected with the way the season finished. So now it's just up to them.
You have to be leery of this game for the play-in, because around a 68, whatever you want to call it, because you remember last year UCLA barely got in. Barely beat Michigan State in the play-in game. Then they went to the Final Four, knocked off Alabama in the round of Sweet 16. So either one of these teams, as I mentioned, are going to be good teams. You can't be trapped into the thought, well, they're having to play to get to the round of 64. They're going to be a good team.
Well, especially this Alabama team, the way they played up and down. They played down to competition at times. But, Gary, I think Nate Oates made a great point. This is Alabama's first non-SEC game since they beat Baylor. It's a team they haven't seen before. It's a team that really isn't, whichever team it is, they're not going to really be familiar with the Alabama style, the offense, and all of these things. So, perhaps that works in Alabama's favor.
You've already said it, but this is a brand new season, Rod. And, there's a lot of pressure on those teams that are 1 seeds and 2 seeds, kind of like Alabama last year, to make a run. Alabama is a 6 seed, which isn't bad, but it's not like people are looking at them and picking them to go to the Final Four. But if you can win a couple games, if you can win this one on Friday, then you're probably going to face Texas Tech, who's really good, the 3 seed in the round of 32. But you win a couple of games as a 6 seed, it's really going to leave everybody with a very positive feeling about this season, despite the ups and downs.
Well, I tell you what it does. You're right. This team really doesn't have a lot of pressure on it, to be honest with you. They can go in. I think they can play loose, even though, with the way the season ended, Gary, the expectations among some, certainly the pressure's not there to that extent. as you mentioned, to some of the higher seeds. But so I think this team can play really loose.
I know this, and again, it's just one game, but that team that went to Seattle back in December 4th and beat Gonzaga and beat them rather handily, that team shows up, they can beat anybody. Anybody in the field. It's going to be fun. First time going back-to-back tournaments since 2006 when Mark Gottfried had his string of 5 consecutive NCAA tournament appearances come to an end. So a lot of momentum for this Alabama basketball team. Need to win on Friday. I agree with you, Rod. Not a ton of pressure to go too far, but need to win on Friday or it's going to really leave a bitter taste in your mouth after losing the final 2 regular season games. First round of the SEC tournament, then first round of the NCAA tournament wouldn't be good.
Totally agree.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to the women. Alabama is not going to the NCAA tournament for the second straight season. They came up a little bit short of that, but they will play in the WNIT. Alabama traveling to Trojan Arena on Thursday night to take on Troy. That will not be easy. Troy's really good. It's the 4th time in 5 years, though, that the team has reached the postseason. Only one of those, the NCAA tournament, as I mentioned last season. But still, postseason play is always special. Christy Curry and Alabama has advanced to the WNIT quarterfinals in 2017 and 2018, so they've had some success in this tournament. Good luck to the Tide. All right, let's get on to softball. Following back-to-back losses to LSU on Saturday in a doubleheader to open up SEC play after going 20-0 in the non-conference, Alabama won on Sunday. It was one, Rod, they needed desperately. I'm going to tell you something. That 2-1 win, there's a big difference between starting out 1-2 and 0-3. Let me tell you that right now. So it was Montana Fouts who struggled, quite frankly, on Saturday against LSU. In fact, the pitching staff did all day. Bouncing back for 10 strikeouts on Saturday, she gets the victory and goes the distance. Huge play there with Jenna Johnson throwing out the LSU base runner that would have tied the game in the 6th. Rod, again, it's early, but you certainly didn't want to start out getting swept on the road. That win Sunday huge.
Yeah, you really didn't. And, you know, they came up big. They didn't fold after, you know, very disappointing those first couple of games, Gary. No question about that. But I'll say this, too. Now, that's a very difficult place historically for Alabama to play. I mean, I think they were like 12-25 going in down there. So it's been a difficult spot.
In fact, LSU, the only team in the Southeastern Conference that has a winning record all-time in softball against Alabama. You're right. So I know it's not what Bama fans wanted, but that was a huge win on Sunday. Alabama's in Hattiesburg tonight, scheduled to play Southern Mississippi. Then tomorrow night, huge game here in Tuscaloosa against Florida State. And then Kentucky comes in for an SEC series this weekend. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama Gymnastics looks to go back-to-back in the Southeastern Conference. We'll explain. And Alabama football return to the practice field for the first day of spring drills this past Friday. Rodney's thoughts on that first workout as the Tide now is taking a break for spring break, but we'll have Alabama football. And we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number there, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Email us, TITV@WVUA23.com, or you can tweet at us. Use the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back after this. And welcome back to Tider Insider Television, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Well, Alabama football has a spring tradition under Nick Saban. That is, he likes to schedule one practice before letting the players leave for spring break. This past Friday, that was the practice at the Thomas Drew Fields. There's Will Anderson. He is a bad dude. Let's just say that. And I mean that as a compliment. He's a good football player. Alabama getting out on the field and, in shorts and helmets. But it was a practice. They got to meet with the coaches and get some work in. And also Coach Saban was able to visit with them about, conducting themselves properly over the spring holidays. Rodney, this 2022 football season is going to be like most of them under Nick Saban. Sky's the limit. They're probably going to be picked preseason #1. Played for the national championship just a couple of months ago. Came up short against Georgia in an SEC championship game rematch. Alabama's added several transfers, all of them top players. Defensive back Elias Ricks, who came from LSU, wide receiver Jermaine Burton from Georgia, and running back Jahmyr Gibbs, who came in from Georgia Tech. With new faces comes questions, though. And here's what Nick Saban had to say about the current we're going to get to that in Coach Talk here in just a moment with Coach Saban. So let me bring in Roddy here for your thoughts on that first practice. I know it wasn't much, but at the same time, you got to see a little bit on the video that they sent out. got to hear from Coach Saban following practice. I sensed a lot of enthusiasm and exuberance in his voice. He's just as hungry for this, his 16th spring at Alabama, as he was his first back in 2007.
Yeah, I think you're right, Gary, in terms of the enthusiasm. Listen, I think last year we talked about where's the leadership going to come from. This year it's a little bit different. I think when you look at the leadership on this team, the things that we've seen, the players, Bryce Young, Will Anderson, you've got a lot of players that's played a lot of football on the defensive side, Jordan Battle, DeMarco Helms. We could go on and on and on. There are a lot of potential leaders on this team, guys that stepped up late last season that were still really young players. So I think that's a real key for this team is all the experience, the leadership that they've got coming back. And you're right. I think there's been a great attitude. That's the feedback we've gotten. A lot of positive vibes.
All right, a couple questions for you coming up. But first, it's time now for Coach Talk with Alabama head coach Nick Saban. He spoke to the media following Friday's practice, and one of the position groups he was asked about is the offensive line. Starting center Darian Dalcourt is expected to miss the entire spring, dealing with an injury situation. But you know what? Other guys have got to step up. Coach Saban feels better about center than any other spot, ironically, on the offensive line.
You know, Darian's going to be out in the spring, but when he comes back, Seth's a good leader. He's a tough guy. You know, I feel really good about those two guys. Just trying to get the other guys in the right spot. There's a lot of competition at the position, and you know, quite frankly, we're moving a lot of guys around to try to see how we can get the best 5 guys out there to play. So, and I'm not disappointed in progress that any of them have made to this point.
Saban referencing Seth McLaughlin, who came in when Dalcourt got hurt with that ankle last year, did a heck of a good job, in fact, down the stretch in the SEC and National Championship game. Let's start with that offensive line, Rodney. There's some other position battles, namely at offensive tackle on that front.
Yeah, I think that's the key. They've got to find a couple of offensive tackles. The good thing is they've got a lot of young candidates, whether it's, you know, J.C. Latham, who's going to work at guard and tackle. Jaden Roberts is another young player, a true redshirt freshman I think has a lot of potential. His true freshman Tyler Booker is here. Dane Shore's another true freshman that's here, but you got Javian Cohen, who started at left guard last year. He's going to work some at left tackle. Not a lot of teams, Gary, have the luxury of having 2 guys that are really good centers. Dalcourt, of course, he's not going through spring practice. Seth McLaughlin. They've got some young players, whether it's James Brockemeyer, T.J. Ferguson, some guys that can play on the inside. Damian George can work, whether it's at tackle or inside at guard. Coach Saban pointed him out as a guy who really, really worked hard in the offseason, so that's good news. Again, a lot of young players that I think can be developed. And listen, I think Eric Wolford, the offensive line coach, everything we hear has been extremely positive. Don't forget now, he took that Kentucky offensive line last year. They didn't have a lot of 5 stars, okay? But he developed them into a Joe Moore Award finalist group. So I think he's going to be really good with these young players in terms of developing them.
Yeah, Kentucky offensive front, they were really nasty. They played hard. All right, Rodney, ask you about the quarterback position. Obviously, Bryce Young's the Heisman Trophy winner, but behind him, you got a returnee in Jalen Milroe, and then the true freshman Ty Simpson. That's it for scholarship quarterbacks now that Paul Tyson has transferred to Arizona State. It's an important spring for those 2 guys as they battle for that backup position.
Yeah, you know, Gary, and you say battle, and that's right. These 2 guys are going to compete, but here's the thing. I think really right now the goal is for each one of them just to focus on their development, getting reps, but putting themselves in a position if they have to play to be prepared to play. I think that's really the key this spring. Both those guys very talented in their own ways. So fortunate to have 3 guys like that.
And real quickly, out for the spring, receiver Ja'Cory Brooks, as we mentioned, center Darian Dalcourt, and defender Keanu Coate all will miss spring with injuries. All right, let's get on to gymnastics. Crimson Tide will be in Birmingham this weekend, looking to capture a 2nd consecutive SEC championship. Crimson Tide will be part of the 2nd session at Legacy Arena on Saturday night. Alabama is currently tied for number 6 in the national rankings, along with Auburn. The Tide and the Tigers will be part of the night session, as well as number 2 Florida and number 5 LSU. The SEC is stacked in gymnastics, just like every sport. In the past month, Alabama has been at its best. The Tide has won its last 3 meets, including back-to-back team scores of 198 or better in the final 2 competitions of the regular season. Head coach Dana Duckworth hopes that this is just the start. She knows her team is capable of even more.
The girls have been hungry for more because they know they have more in the tank. I think they used that term when they were interviewed, is we have so much more to give. And they are giving, and they're giving, and they're giving their best every single day, and they're being hard on themselves in a very productive way to make us better. So you just continue to grind it out.
Well, still to come on TITV, Alabama looks more than ready to join the SEC arms race. We'll explain. And next, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, that phone number, 205-348 WVUA 348-9882. All right, Tider Insider Nation, we want to hear from you next, right here on the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. Alabama baseball hosted Binghamton over the weekend, and when you host Binghamton, nothing personal, but you want to get a sweep, and the Tide did. They took all 3 games, and that was big because they play at Southern Miss tomorrow night in a game that was postponed or pushed back from tonight to tomorrow night. Then they open SEC play this weekend against Florida at the Joe. So, you know what? It's about to get serious. Really, Alabama looked good. They gave up just 5 earned run in 27 innings over the weekend, as I said, building up some momentum prior to SEC play. And welcome back into Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. It's time to take some phone calls. And first up tonight is our good pal up in Walker County, Sammy the Tomato Man. Hey, Sammy.
Hey, Gary. Rodney, how y'all doing? Just to comment further on the offensive line, we got a new coach, guys, and I believe it'll be outstanding. Seth McLaughlin, it'd be hard to move him from the starter because he really looked good. But what this offensive line coach, Gary and Rodney, I want y'all's thoughts on that pass blocking. You know, Kentucky, they ran, and Alabama probably want to throw the ball a little more than they did up there, but I think he'll have to work on that initially more than anything else, but I think it'd be outstanding, guys.
No, listen, I think he's got a ton of experience, Sammy. They did what they had to do there at Kentucky. You know, he can certainly coach, whether it's pass blocking, run blocking, whatever it might be. I think, you know, again, he's got a lot of really good young players to work with, a lot of good young players to develop, and he seems to have the right mindset, Gary. Everything I get back is that offensive line room, there's a lot of enthusiasm.
Thanks for the phone call, Sammy. Let's get to an email. And the email question of the day is brought to you by KDM Services, serving your family like our family. KDM Service Corporation, heating and cooling isn't just our job, it's our passion. All right, Gerald in Gadsden wants to know why we not heard more about the Brockermeyer twins, speaking of the offensive line. Well, Gerald, it's a good question. They both were learning last year. Tommy's a tackle, and James is a center, but I think they're fine. I think they're just among that many number of guys competing on the offensive line this spring, talented players.
Yeah, I think a lot of people expect every 5-star to come in and be Cam Robinson, start immediately, whoever it might be. But listen, you know, Tommy suffered some injuries in high school. You know, sometimes you have that adjustment. I know that James was probably a little undersized. He's a really good player, got the right mindset, pit bull attitude, all of those things, Gary. But, you know, it's the physical development. It's a big adjustment going from high school to this level.
All right, thanks for the email, Gerald. Let's get to a phone call with our pal BT here in Tuscaloosa. All right, BT, what's up?
Not much, Gary. How are y'all doing tonight, Rodney and Gary?
Doing great, BT. What you got, man?
I want to relay what you were saying earlier on the show about the basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to relay is, if we go down to San Diego, we gotta have momentum and enthusiasm.
Yeah, no doubt about it, BT. They got to be ready to play. Listen, I think they're going to win on Friday. I think they're going to beat either Rutgers or Notre Dame. After that, if they get to Texas Tech, I'm not so sure. But, I think they'll win that game Friday afternoon.
I have a good feeling about it, too, Gary. I think they're going to be highly motivated kind of after the way the season ended.
All right, we'll be back with more TITV right after this. And we're back here on this Tuesday, March 15 edition of Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Let's get back out on the phone lines, and Caleb is with us up in Hubbardville. Hey, Caleb.
Hey, guys. I hope y'all are doing good tonight.
Thank you.
I was wanting to ask about the offensive tackle competition and who is the new strength coach, Rick Dennison. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, listen, I don't know that much about him. I think he was at Indiana with Ballou and Ray previously, but I don't know that much about him. But obviously, let me tell you, if David Ballou kind of signed off on him, you know he's top-notch. He worked with him, so he's got experience, the familiarity, all of those things.
Offensive tackle. which we talked a lot about. He wants to know about offensive tackle.
Yeah, you know, again, we talked about a lot of the guys that we think can compete. J.C. Latham, Jaden Roberts, Damian George is still around in terms of he can play guard or tackle. Javian Cohen's working there. There's some other guys, Gary, that's certainly in the mix. I'll say this, too. There's a possibility Alabama may add another player. Could be a grad transfer. Tyler Steen, 30-plus starts at Vanderbilt. He'll visit Alabama later this month. So he could be a guy to watch. Again, he's got a lot of experience. Now, he wouldn't join the program until the summer.
All right. Let's get to email before we close it out. And this is in reference to last week. David had emailed about Bear Bryant bobbleheads, where you could purchase one. And I had said, remember, Rodney, I didn't even know if there were any Bear Bryant bobbleheads. But I said, if anybody out there knew of one, well, I got a text message on my Facebook page, and this is proof that there are Bear Bryant bobbleheads. You see it right there. This was from the early 80s, but I looked on the internet. If you go to Amazon or if you just Google Bear Bryant bobbleheads, you can buy one, David, on the internet. I don't know if you can find one in a retail store or not, but they are available on the internet. Just Google Bear Bryant bobbleheads, and thanks to one of our viewers for sending in that was his grandfather's, he said. So there you go. Glad we could help you out. All right, one more email, Rodney, before we close it out. Will Mari Burnett be healthy next season? He's the basketball transfer from Texas Tech. We've talked a lot about Texas Tech. Alabama may be playing them in the second game. That's from Brock and Hoover. Yes, he will be. Unfortunately, ACL tear prior to the season. All the reports were running that he could make it from anywhere, that he was just a incredible shooter. Yeah, he'll be back ready to go this coming season. This season's not over, so you want to focus this. But next season with him and that recruiting class, they're going to be really good.
Big addition. Yep. Great addition.
All right, thanks for the phone calls and the emails. We'll be back to wrap it up right after this. All right, we got a heartwarming story for you now. Alabama's Bobby Colantonio wins the NCAA gold in the hammer throw at the NCAA Indoor Championships, when just 6 years ago he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and had a 20% survival rate.
Wow.
20% chance to live, and he wins the gold. My gosh, how neat is that? This was the first national weight throw title in Alabama program history, and Colantonio is an inspiration to everybody. Way to go, man. That is nice. All right, thank you for tuning in to Tider Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don't forget, if you missed any of tonight's show, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 after the news at 10, or online anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. We're going to leave you with some highlights from earlier today on the beautiful Black Warrior River. It rained a little bit, but Alabama rowing had a scrimmage against the U.S. Naval Academy. Beautiful river, beautiful body of water. A little rain can't keep these ladies from getting out there and rowing hard. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you again next week on Tider Insider TV.